Have you ever heard a secret so outrageous it could destroy an entire legacy? Picture a world of shimmering chandeliers, hushed corridors of power, and pristine penthouse suites stretching high above the bustling city. Within these walls, a millionaire stands at the center of a scandal so shocking it threatens his marriage, his fortune, and even the baby growing in his wife's belly. But wait, there's another baby too, one claimed by a woman from his past. Join us as we unravel a tangled web of lies, loyalties, and love in a drama that will leave you breathless at every turn. The night sky above Manhattan glittered with the promise of secrets. Below, the Grand Central Station clock chimed its timeless melody, marking the late hour with solemn grace. Towers of glass and steel dominated the horizon, each containing its own stories of ambition, heartache, and triumph. Among them, the Alderman Tower, 33 stories of sleek architecture, beckoned with its state-of-the-art penthouse suite. Richard Rick Alderman stood by the penthouse's floor-to-ceiling window, gazing at the city that had once swallowed him whole. Years ago, he had arrived in New York with nothing but determination. Now his name graced the shining sign of Alderman Properties, a real estate empire with clients as far-reaching as Europe and Asia. But wealth had its price, and a hush had fallen over the suite. Rick felt the tension in the air. He could even taste it, that metallic tang of trouble brewing just out of sight. He glanced over his shoulder at his pregnant wife, Charlotte Alderman, formerly Charlotte Danvers, a woman of graceful poise and unstoppable ambition in her own right. She was sitting on a chaise lounge, hands resting protectively over the gentle swell of her belly. "How are you feeling, Rick?" asked his voice, low with concern. It had been a difficult pregnancy so far, marked by fainting spells and near-constant nausea. Charlotte looked up, offering a small but grateful smile. "I'm fine. A little dizzy, but Dr. Mallory at the New York Presbyterian Hospital said it's normal with my current condition. The baby is healthy." "Good," Rick replied, nodding. "That's all that matters." They had always been honest with each other, but tonight there was something heavy lingering between them, an unspoken anxiety. Only a few hours before, Rick had received a cryptic text message from an unknown number. "We need to talk. It's about our child." He hadn't mentioned it to Charlotte, trying to protect her from stress. The last thing she needed was some random stranger claiming a connection to him. But the timing ate at him. Charlotte was roughly 5 months pregnant. He was certain the text had nothing to do with her. Could it be an old flame stirring up drama? Could it be about a business deal? He wasn't sure, but if there was one thing Rick had learned through his years climbing the social ladder, it was never to underestimate how far some people would go for money, clout, or revenge. Charlotte rose carefully and approached him, slipping her hand into his. "You're worried about something?" she said, softly. He pressed a kiss to her forehead. "Just business, love. Tomorrow I have a meeting with some tough investors from Dubai. Nothing to fret about." She didn't push, though. Her dark eyes seemed to probe his soul, telling him she could sense there was more to it. But for now, they let the silence between them say what their lips could not. Outside, the city pulsated with life. Inside, in the quiet hush of the Alderman penthouse, storm clouds of uncertainty gathered. Tomorrow, Rick would discover just how life-changing that text message could be, and how the mistress who'd sent it would soon threaten everything he and Charlotte held dear. Richard Alderman's journey from a humble childhood in Bentonville, Arkansas, to the towering heights of Manhattan real estate was the stuff of legend. His father had been a small-town mechanic who struggled to make ends meet, while his mother worked 2 part-time jobs to keep food on the table. Ambition sprouted in Rick early on. As a boy, he read countless success stories. Donald Trump's early real estate gambits, Lee Shao-Ki's rags to riches transformations in Hong Kong, even Sam Walton's revolutionary approach to retail. He devoured these tales like a starving man confronted with a banquet. By the age of 20, Rick had scraped together enough money to buy a run-down duplex in a struggling Brooklyn neighborhood. He worked day and night renovating it by hand, painting walls, repairing leaky pipes, rewiring old electrical systems. When he sold it at a substantial profit, he caught the entrepreneurial bug for good. More properties followed some, he flipped others he rented out. Eventually, he took on larger projects, forming alderman properties. His relentless drive, along with a knack for reading real estate trends, turned him into a millionaire almost overnight. He met Charlotte during a fundraising gala at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, hosted by the Rockefeller Foundation. She was the daughter of a respected British diplomat and a Colombian socialite who had settled in New York after her father's foreign service ended. Charlotte worked as an event coordinator for UNICEF at the time, bridging her dual passions for philanthropy and networking. Rick was instantly captivated by her grace, her confident posture, and a distinctive intellectual sparkle in her eyes. She in turn found his determination and empathy surprising for a wealthy magnate. He was neither arrogant nor dismissive of people with less power. Their relationship evolved quickly. Dinners at Gramercy Tavern, strolls through Central Park, late-night brainstorming on philanthropic endeavors. When Rick proposed to her at the Plaza Hotel, complete with an elegant Tiffany & Co. medallion, Ring New York's gossip columns lit up. The wedding itself was a star-studded affair at the Frick Collection, combining old-world charm with modern extravagance. Unsurprisingly, their union became the toast of high society, with people speculating on how their combined fortunes might reshape Manhattan's real estate and philanthropic landscapes. But no amount of wealth or social power can fully guard against human frailty. Although Rick never displayed the philandering habits of some peers in his circle, he did have a past. Women who had drifted in and out of his life before Charlotte, each relationship leaving its own complex imprint. The phone number that texted him last night could belong to any of them. Years ago, before Charlotte, Rick had been involved with someone who disappeared abruptly. He even recalled one dizzying fling while traveling in Europe, specifically in Monte Carlo, where he'd let business frustrations turn into nights of heavy drinking at the famed Casino de Monte Carlo. Could it be that woman? These questions swirled through Rick's mind as he prepared for the day. He dressed in a tailored Tom Ford suit, determined to maintain his composure. Little did he know that in mere hours the cracks in his meticulously built world would begin to show. The price of greatness, after all, is often paid in secrets, and someone was about to collect on Rick Alderman's. Late that afternoon, Rick emerged from a meeting with the investors from Dubai, feeling triumphant yet uneasy. Negotiations had gone smoothly, almost too smoothly, like the hush before a storm. He glanced at his phone. There it was again, a single message from the unknown number. "Meet me at the Blue Diamond Lounge, 10 p.m. sharp. Do not be late." Blue Diamond Lounge was a luxurious bar near Bryant Park, notorious for hushed deals and discreet encounters. High-end clientele frequented it for its privacy. Rick's pulse quickened. He typed back a curt response, ignoring the swirl of dread in his stomach. Fine. 10 p.m. He contemplated telling Charlotte, but hesitated, recalling her recent dizzy spells. Stress could harm both her and the baby. He decided to handle this alone, at least for now. That night, the Blue Diamond Lounge was awash in soft jazz tunes and the muted hum of whispered conversations. Clusters of plush velvet chairs formed intimate enclaves under subdued lights. Rick stepped inside, scanning the room. He felt out of place. Usually he attended such venues with Charlotte, or for a business meeting, never for a secret rendezvous with a stranger. A hostess guided him to a corner booth, secluded behind intricate hand-carved wooden dividers. Waiting there was a woman he vaguely recognized, Sabrina Shaw. Her striking hazel eyes, framed by thick lashes, locked onto him the moment he stepped toward her. "Rick." She greeted, her voice low and measured. He swallowed hard, memories flaring. Sabrina had been a hostess at a networking event for real estate moguls in Monte Carlo 6 years ago. She'd been introduced to him by a mutual acquaintance, a night of smooth conversation, a few glasses of champagne, and yes, a fling. But that was it. They had parted ways. He never expected to see her again. "What's this about Sabrina?" he asked, taking a seat. She leaned forward, the overhead light casting half her face in shadow. "I've been looking for you for a long time. You disappeared after that night in Monte Carlo, and I—" She paused, pressing her lips together. "I found out I was pregnant. I tried to contact you, but you were unreachable. Your phone was disconnected. You'd changed offices." Rick's mind spun. Pregnant. He stared at her, struggling to recall every detail of that night. They had taken precautions, he was certain. Anxiety twisted in his gut. "And now you show up after all these years. Why didn't you try harder to get in touch?" She smiled bitterly. "I moved around. I had my own complications. My child Michael was born sick. Her eyes glistened. "I believed you had a right to know. I tried a few times, but Alderman Properties was always guarded by an army of gatekeepers." Rick felt a prickle of guilt. His expansion's public image and security measures had indeed grown. If she had tried to reach him a year or two after Monte Carlo, it would have been a chaotic time for him. He was sealing deals across continents, changing numbers, traveling ceaselessly. Why now, he asked quietly, noticing how her voice trembled ever so slightly. "Michael is what, 5 or 6 years old?" She nodded. "He's 5. He just started school. I'm here because I'm out of options. He has a chronic condition. The doctors said there might be a genetic component, and you need to be tested. If you are his father, he'll need your help." Rick's heart thundered. He pulled out his wallet and glanced at a photo of Charlotte from their wedding day. Was it possible that while he was building a new life, a new family, an old liaison had fathered a child? As the overhead light flickered, he looked at Sabrina's serious expression. The lounge's jazz tempo seemed to slow to a haunting dirge. "If he's really my son, I'll do whatever it takes," Rick said, tension lacing every word. He stood up, needing air. The image of his pregnant wife flashed before his eyes, her gentle, trusting smile, the unconditional love she had shown him. And now, another child with Sabrina. The ring on his finger suddenly felt heavier, weighted by secrets he never intended to keep. Rick's entire ride back to the penthouse was a haze of emotion. Thoughts raced the face of Sabrina. The possibility of a 5-year-old boy, who might be his son, and the knowledge that Charlotte was at home pregnant with what they believed to be his first child. He didn't say a word to the driver as the town car wove through late-night traffic. He had agreed to meet Sabrina again, this time at a hospital for a paternity test. Despite his swirling confusion, he knew one thing. If Michael was indeed his child, he could not turn his back on him. Stepping into the apartment, Rick found Charlotte asleep on the couch, a blanket draped over her. She stirred when she sensed him nearby. "Rick," she whispered, rubbing her eyes. "You're home late. Everything all right?" He forced a smile. "Just a business emergency. I'm sorry to wake you." She blinked, noticing the tension in his posture. "You look worried." "Investors threw me a curveball," he lied, gently helping her up. "Let's get you to bed." He cradled her in his arms, something he'd taken to doing each night since her pregnancy, made walking long corridors a chore. She nuzzled into his neck, yawning. "Sometimes I think you carry the whole world on your shoulders," she murmured. Her words cut deeply. He climbed the winding staircase to their bedroom, heart heavy with secrets. Soon she was tucked in, drifting back to sleep. Yet Rick lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, consumed by the knowledge that a storm was about to crash into their peaceful life. At dawn, he silently rose, tiptoeing away so as not to disturb Charlotte. He slipped into his private study, lined with mahogany shelves, holding countless books on architecture, business, strategy, and global finance. He paused at one shelf, running his fingers over the spines, remembering the hunger that once drove him to read about men who seemed unstoppable. His phone buzzed with a new message from Sabrina. "Please meet me at the St. James Medical Center at 3 p.m. tomorrow. Michael's pediatric specialist, Dr. Emerson, will be there." He sank into his leather chair. St. James Medical Center was a well-known facility in Midtown, especially for pediatric care. It was also known for absolute discretion. He typed back, "I'll be there." Little did he know the next day would bring more drama than a simple paternity test. Sabrina, for her part, wasn't one to operate in secrecy for long. Gossip had a way of spreading in certain circles, especially when it involved a millionaire of Rick's caliber. As he put his phone aside, a pang of guilt tore through him. Should he confide in Charlotte? She deserved honesty. She was, after all, his wife and carrying his child. But how could he possibly share that he might already have a 5-year-old son with another woman? The ring on his finger sparkled in the early morning light, a silent reminder of the vows he had made. Time was running out. He would have to make a decision soon. As the city stirred beneath the penthouse windows, Rick Alderman realized that for the first time in his charmed life, he was helpless against the avalanche of consequences heading his way. Charlotte woke to find Rick gone, which was becoming more frequent. She told herself it was business. He was, after all, leading a burgeoning empire. Yet a sliver of doubt nagged at her. Stress had lingered in the apartment for weeks, and she sensed it was not merely the usual corporate drama. Determined to help ease his burdens, she decided to surprise him at his office later that day. After all, pregnancy hadn't robbed her of her resourcefulness, only her capacity for caffeine, which she missed dearly. By mid-morning, she made her way to Alderman Properties headquarters. The front desk staff recognized her immediately. "Mrs. Alderman." "It's lovely to see you," said Vanessa, the receptionist. "Rick's in a meeting, but you're welcome to wait in his office." Charlotte smiled discreetly, noting how the entire staff seemed tense. She walked past glass-walled conference rooms, noticing hushed conversations that ended abruptly when she came into view. Her intuition prickled. Something was definitely off. In Rick's executive office, a corner suite with panoramic views of Manhattan, Charlotte settled into a plush armchair. She glanced around at the framed photographs, Rick shaking hands with foreign dignitaries receiving philanthropic awards, standing with her at their wedding. The memory of that day warmed her heart. She stroked her growing belly. Her baby gave a slight kick, almost as though reassuring her that she was not alone. Eventually, Rick entered, looking startled to see her. Charlotte. "This is a surprise," he exclaimed. He quickly recovered, giving her a kiss on the cheek. She searched his face. "You're running yourself ragged, honey. I wanted to see if I could lighten your day." He forced a grin. "Everything is fine. Just some last-minute negotiations I need to finalize. I'm sorry I haven't been around more." She placed a gentle hand on his. "I understand. But Rick, I can sense something's weighing on you." Rick hesitated, torn between the urge to confess and the instinct to shield her from unnecessary stress. Before he could respond, his assistant Lorraine stepped in with a polite knock. "Apologies, Mr. Alderman, but your car is here for the 2:30 meeting." Charlotte raised an eyebrow. "Another meeting?" Rick nodded, avoiding her gaze. "Yes, something just came up. Could we have dinner tonight and talk?" "Then?" Disappointed but trying to be supportive. Charlotte agreed. "Of course. But Rick, please don't shut me out. Whatever it is, we're a team. Remember that." She kissed him goodbye, lingering long enough to feel his heart pounding in his chest. Then she left a weight in her own chest, telling her that something monumental was about to break. As she passed through the lobby, she caught sight of a woman wearing dark sunglasses and a stylish coat waiting by the elevator bank. The woman's gaze flicked in Charlotte's direction. A brief moment of eye contact sent a chill through Charlotte. Who was that? And why did something about her feel oddly familiar? Charlotte filed the encounter away, reminding herself she was likely overthinking. Still, a voice in her heart told her that the woman's stare was not accidental, and that Charlotte's life was on the brink of change, whether she was prepared for it or not. Rick arrived at St. James Medical Center promptly at 3 p.m. Sabrina greeted him in the corridor, her face noticeably tense. "Dr. Emerson is ready for us," she said, leading him down a hallway lined with pastel paintings of teddy bears and balloons, typical pediatric decor. They entered a small examination room, where Michael sat on an exam table, dangling his legs. The boy had brown hair and hazel eyes, just like his mother. Rick felt his breath catch. Could this child truly be his? The boy offered a shy smile, and Rick's heart twisted. Dr. Emerson, a tall woman in a crisp white coat, addressed them calmly. "We're going to do a simple cheek swab for paternity testing. Results usually take a few days. In the meantime, we need to confirm some medical history. Michael has a rare blood disorder. It's not life-threatening at the moment, but it can be in certain circumstances. We're trying to identify if there's a genetic predisposition. Mr. Alderman, your cooperation is vital." Rick nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. "Anything you need, Doctor?" Sabrina turned toward Michael. "Honey, say hello to Mr. Alderman." Michael looked up wide-eyed. "Hi. Are you a doctor?" Rick swallowed the lump in his throat. "No, I'm a friend. I'm here to help." The test was completed in minutes, but it felt like hours to Rick. The entire time his thoughts drifted to Charlotte, to their unborn child. How would he ever explain this? Sabrina's gaze was relentless, full of expectation and fear. She wanted a lifeline for Michael, and Rick understood that. But what about Charlotte's feelings? Her trust? When the test concluded, Rick stepped out into the hallway with Sabrina. "I'll wait for the results. Until then, you have my number. Let me know if anything changes," he told her. She nodded, tears shimmering in her eyes. "I just want him to be safe. If you're his father, I hope you'll accept him. Rick's phone buzzed, snapping the fragile moment. He glanced at the screen. Charlotte. Reflexively, he rejected the call. Sabrina noted it, her expression flickering with something akin to pity. Rick, I didn't come here to ruin your life, she said quietly. But Michael is real. You need to be prepared for what's next. He ran a trembling hand through his hair. I know. Just give me time to sort this out. As Rick hurried away, he couldn't shake the sense that every step he took away from Sabrina and Michael was one step deeper into a moral quagmire. He had always prided himself on honesty and fairness in business. How ironic that in his personal life he was now teetering on the brink of lies and betrayal. Meanwhile, in another part of Manhattan, Charlotte was wrestling with her own suspicions. She had recognized the name Sabrina Shaw on a piece of paper inadvertently left on Rick's desk earlier that day. She didn't know who this woman was, but her instincts told her that Sabrina was no mere business contact. One question pulsed through her mind. Could her husband be living a double life? That evening, Charlotte waited patiently in the penthouse living room, the city lights flickering through the windows like distant signals. She had prepared a light dinner mostly for Rick, since her sense of taste had been temperamental during pregnancy. As midnight approached, the food lay untouched, and Rick still hadn't returned. She texted him multiple times, but there was no response. Worry turned to anger. Something was undeniably wrong. When she finally heard the elevator ding, she hurried to the door, heart pounding. Rick stumbled in looking weary and distraught. Before she could utter a word, he mumbled an excuse about urgent business matters. I've been trying to reach you for hours, Charlotte said, her voice trembling with concern and a hint of accusation. He avoided her gaze. I'm sorry the phone was on silent. She watched him warily. Rick, we need to talk, he sighed, shoulders slumping. I know. But not tonight, Charlotte. I'm exhausted. Can we please just... At that moment, his phone buzzed loudly in his pocket. They both froze. Charlotte raised an eyebrow as he fumbled to silence it. The screen flashed a name. Sabrina. Who is Sabrina? Charlotte asked, her eyes narrowing. It's complicated, he replied, tucking the phone away. Try me, she said, arms folded over her chest. He looked at her torn, between his sense of loyalty to her and the swirl of guilt gnawing at him. Finally, he offered a weak attempt at placation. She's an old acquaintance from Monte Carlo. She claims she says I may have fathered her child. Charlotte's mind reeled. Her hand instinctively went to her belly, as if protecting her own unborn child from the shock of his words. Are you serious, Rick? When how she stopped mid-sentence, feeling tears threaten. This is insane. Why would she show up now? She says the boy has a blood disorder. I took a paternity test today, Rick admitted. I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. I didn't know how. Her eyes filled with hurt. And you kept this from me, the person carrying your child. Don't you think I have the right to know everything that could affect our future? He reached for her hand, but she recoiled. Charlotte, please. I didn't want to worry you. We're about to have our first baby. She shook her head. That baby might not be your first, she murmured bitterly. Tears streamed down her cheeks, and she retreated to their bedroom, shutting the door. He stood in the living room, thunderstruck by how quickly the life he had cherished was unraveling. A single text from Sabrina came through. We need more help. Michael's in the hospital tonight. He had a fever. Can you come? Rick stared at the message torn between the promise he had made to Sabrina and the marriage vow that he seemed to be shattering. In that moment, he knew the mistress wasn't done making claims, and that Charlotte, pregnant, heartbroken, and alone in the next room, would never look at him the same again. When Charlotte locked herself in the bedroom, her emotions poured out in sobs she could no longer contain. She pressed her hands to her abdomen, desperate to sense the life within her, the one innocent ray of hope she clung to. Eventually, exhaustion overtook her, and she fell into a restless sleep, haunted by images of a faceless child calling out for Rick. She awoke the next morning with puffy eyes and an unsettled heart. Rick was already gone. No note, no message. Determined not to wallow in despair, she resolved to piece together the truth. After a quick shower, she dialed the only person in her social circle who might know about Sabrina Shaw, her best friend, Gwendolyn Carter. Gwendolyn was a PR specialist for the famed Carter and Matthews firm, which handled scandal containment for high-profile clients. If there was gossip swirling about Rick, Gwendolyn would have heard it. "Gwen, I need to talk," Charlotte said, voice quivering. They met at a small bistro in the Upper East Side. Charlotte spilled everything: Sabrina's sudden appearance, the child, the potential scandal. Gwendolyn's eyes widened. "My God, I haven't heard anything specifically about Sabrina Shaw, but there have been rumors for weeks that someone was about to drop a massive revelation on Rick. I assumed it was business. This changes things." Charlotte took a shaky sip of tea. "He never said anything until it all blew up in my face. I feel betrayed." Gwendolyn reached across the table, squeezing Charlotte's hand. "He probably felt trapped. But that doesn't excuse keeping you in the dark. You're his wife carrying his baby. You have a right to know. I need to know who this Sabrina Shaw really is," Charlotte said, voice turning resolute. "Can you leverage your contacts to find out everything? Family background, any prior scandals, exes, financial troubles, whatever might explain why she's targeting Rick now." Gwendolyn nodded. "Consider it done. I'll discreetly check into her. Meanwhile, Charlotte, take care of yourself. Stress isn't good for you or the baby." Later that afternoon, Charlotte returned to the penthouse, stepping into an uncomfortable quiet. She noticed Rick's laptop open on the kitchen counter, a news alert flashing. Her heart sank. A tabloid website had just published a story. Real estate tycoon Richard Alderman accused of secret love child. The article was short on details, no names, no photos, but the insinuation was enough to stoke the flames of rumor. She felt nauseated fury and humiliation surging within her. This was exactly what she'd feared, a public circus. Desperate for calm, she closed the laptop, heading to the nursery they'd started preparing. The walls were painted a soft lavender, a gender-neutral choice that Charlotte had come to love. She ran her fingers over the crib, imagining the nights she and Rick would spend here, soothing their newborn. Now the picture felt incomplete. Would Rick be the devoted father she'd always envisioned, or would his attention be divided, his affection forcibly shared with a child from another woman? She placed a hand on her belly, tears welling up again. "I'll protect you," she whispered to her unborn baby. "No matter what happens, I won't let anyone hurt us." But even as she spoke the words, a chill of uncertainty spread through her. The mistress had made her claim, and the ring she wore on her finger, once a symbol of enduring love, felt like a fragile promise on the verge of shattering. Days stretched into an agonizing wait for the paternity test results. During this time, Rick had effectively split his world in two. By day, he reassured Charlotte that they would face any outcome together, insisting he loved only her. By night, he found himself drawn to Michael's hospital bedside, watching the boy battle fevers and infections tied to his blood disorder. Sabrina stayed close, often brushing Rick's arm, as a silent gesture of her gratitude and her hope. Despite the complicated emotions swirling between them, Rick couldn't deny the uncanny resemblance Michael bore to him. The same determined set of the jaw, the same restless energy in his eyes. Charlotte felt his absence like a knife in her heart, though she tried to remain strong. She threw herself into preparing for the baby scheduling appointments and finalizing the nursery. Yet every time she caught a glimpse of Rick's face gaunt with worry, she wondered if he was thinking of her and their unborn child, or of Sabrina and Michael. Meanwhile, Gwendolyn's investigation yielded some startling information. I found out that Sabrina Shaw was linked to a few other high-profile men over the years, Gwen reported. There's speculation she's done this before, claiming paternity for leverage or financial gain. In one case, the rumor was quickly squashed by hush money. Nothing proven, of course. Charlotte's heart seized with equal parts hope and dread. If Sabrina was a grifter, it might absolve Rick. But what if Michael truly was his son? As public curiosity mounted, paparazzi began lurking around Alderman Tower and the penthouse. Charlotte's phone buzzed incessantly with calls from unknown reporters seeking a statement. She started wearing large sunglasses and hats just to move around the city without being recognized. In her more vulnerable moments, she considered traveling abroad, maybe to her parents' estate in London, to escape the media frenzy. But leaving would mean acknowledging defeat, and she wasn't ready to give up on her marriage just yet. On the third day after the test, Rick found himself pacing outside Dr. Emerson's office, Sabrina at his side. She clutched a tissue in her hand, tears forming in her eyes before the results were even in. He kept glancing at his phone Charlotte had called, but he hadn't answered. He wanted the truth before he spoke another word to his wife. Dr. Emerson emerged, face solemn. "We have the results, Rick. Can you come in alone first?" Sabrina nodded, letting him walk in without protest. Inside, Dr. Emerson closed the door and offered a seat. "I'll get straight to the point," she said, pushing a file toward him. "The test confirms that you are Michael's father." Rick felt his breath leave his body in a rush. He stared blankly at the file, reading the words, but not quite registering them. All the guilt, fear, and dread coalesced into one staggering reality: he had a son. This also means the genetic components we suspected are likely from you. Dr. Emerson continued, her voice kind but firm. "Michael will need regular treatment and possibly a bone marrow transplant if his condition worsens. That transplant would ideally come from a family member. You should be tested as a potential donor." Rick raked a hand through his hair. "Yes, of course. Whatever he needs." When he stepped out, Sabrina read the truth in his face. She sobbed, folding into his arms. He hugged her, caught between empathy for her struggle and an overwhelming sense of betrayal toward Charlotte. A single thought pounded in his mind. What have I done? Outside rain battered the windows, a fitting mirror to Rick's tumultuous emotions. He had fathered a child out of wedlock, and now that child's future, possibly his life, depended on Rick's care. And Charlotte, his pregnant wife, she would soon discover this, too. That evening, Rick returned to a penthouse practically ablaze with confrontation. Charlotte was waiting. Her eyes red from crying, phone clutched in her hand. It was clear she had already seen the official test results. Sabrina had not bothered to keep the information under wraps, and the tabloids picked it up within hours. "You're the father," Charlotte stated, in a voice so calm it chilled him. "It's confirmed." Rick removed his coat, hesitating. Yes." She swallowed her composure, teetering. "So that boy is your son. A living child. And I'm here pregnant discovering this like everyone else through the media, Charlotte." "Please," Rick began, his voice cracking. "I didn't know. I swear to you it was a one-time thing, years before we met." She slammed her hand on the kitchen counter. "But you never suspected. You never considered the possibility that one of your flings could haunt us. This woman has a history. Rick, she manipulates men, extracts money. According to Gwen, this isn't the first time she's pulled a paternity stunt." Rick felt anger flare. "And you think I'm not concerned about that? The difference here is that Michael is truly my son. I can't just ignore him. Charlotte, he's sick." She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I know. I'm not a monster, Rick. I feel for the boy. But you blindsided me. Our baby is due in a few months, and instead of preparing for that joy, I'm dealing with scandal and heartbreak." Silence gripped them both. Finally, Charlotte took a shaky breath. "I need space. I need time to process." Rick's chest tightened in panic. "Don't say that. We can figure this out together." She stared into his eyes, searching for honesty. "You're bound to that child now, just as you're bound to me. But can we survive this? Rick, is our marriage strong enough?" He was about to respond when the doorbell rang. Against better judgment, Charlotte walked to answer it. Standing there, bold as daylight, was Sabrina Shaw. Charlotte's grip on the doorframe tightened. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice quavering with rage and shock. Sabrina offered a conciliatory smile. "I'm sorry to intrude, but I had nowhere else to go. Michael's condition took a turn for the worse. He's stable now, but the doctors said he might need a transplant. They need Rick's immediate cooperation for further testing." Charlotte bristled, but Rick stepped forward, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Charlotte, she has every right to update me about Michael's health." Sabrina's gaze darted to Charlotte's pregnant belly. For a fleeting moment, guilt flashed across her face, as though she realized the enormity of her intrusion. I didn't mean to cause this chaos, but Michael is our priority now. Please understand." Charlotte's chest rose and fell in tight, rapid breaths. She knew Sabrina was right about Michael, but the sight of this woman, the unintentional wedge she'd driven into Charlotte's marriage, was too painful to tolerate. Sabrina turned her eyes back to Rick. "Will you come with me to the hospital? They're running tests." The question hung in the air as Charlotte, pregnant with Rick's child, watched him agonize over the fate of the child he already had. In that moment, everything hung by a thread so thin and frayed that the slightest tug would break it. Rick made a split-second decision. He couldn't abandon Michael, not now. Without a word, he grabbed his coat and keys. Charlotte watched him go, feeling as though her heart had been ripped in two. He paused at the door, turning to her. "I love you," he said, voice trembling. "Don't ever doubt that. I'll be back." The elevator door closed behind him, and Sabrina leaving Charlotte alone in the cavernous penthouse. She sank onto the couch, hand pressed over her mouth to stifle a scream. Within an hour, Gwendolyn arrived. She found Charlotte lost in an emotional storm, curled up on the couch. The moment Charlotte saw her friend, the floodgates opened. Gwendolyn embraced her, rubbing her back soothingly. "We'll get through this," Gwendolen whispered. "You're not alone." Charlotte wiped her tears, sniffing. I can't believe my life has turned into this. I was so happy, Gwen. I still love him, but this is too much." Gwendolen looked thoughtful. "I have an idea. Sabrina's financial records, from what I can glean, are suspicious. She's not as destitute as she claims. She's been funneling money through different accounts, courtesy of another older man she was involved with. Maybe there's more at play here." Charlotte's eyes narrowed. "You think she has an ulterior motive beyond Michael's illness?" Gwendolen shrugged. "I don't know, but it won't hurt to dig deeper. We might be dealing with a situation where Sabrina is leveraging her son's condition for personal gain. Let me reach out to some contacts and see if we can confirm." Meanwhile, at the hospital, Rick sat outside Michael's room. Exhaustion etched into every line of his face. Sabrina paced the hallway, anxiously stealing glances at him. He pulled out his phone to text Charlotte. "I'm sorry. Taking tests for bone marrow compatibility. We'll call soon." Seconds later, a reply buzzed in. "Take care of Michael." "I understand." Rick exhaled shakily, relief mixing with guilt. How could Charlotte be so understanding, despite all the pain he'd inflicted? After undergoing a flurry of blood work, Rick stumbled into the waiting area. Sabrina stood, chewing her lip. "Thank you," she murmured. "For helping." Rick shoved his hands into his pockets. "He's my son. I'll do whatever is necessary." She swallowed, tears glistening. "Rick, I know this is a nightmare for you, especially with your wife expecting. I never wanted this to be so dramatic. If Michael's condition wasn't so urgent." He halted her with a raised hand. "I understand. But Sabrina, if there's something else going on here, if you're hiding anything, tell me now. I can't handle any more lies." She blinked rapidly, shaking her head. "No lies. I'm only focusing on Michael." But a shadow of unease crossed her face, fleeting yet unmistakable. The doctors emerged, stating they'd have the compatibility results in a few days. Rick felt as though the entire world was on pause, waiting to see if his bone marrow could save his son. A father's duty, a mother's desperation, and a wife's heartbreak, all coalesced into one unstoppable force, fate. As dawn approached, Rick left the hospital, mind reeling with the knowledge that Sabrina might not be telling the whole truth. He needed an ally, someone who could dig into her past without alarming Charlotte further. Pulling out his phone, he dialed Gwendolen's number. Unlikely as it was, his wife's best friend was the only person he trusted to uncover the secrets that threatened to tear his life apart. A tense week crawled by. Rick's tests returned he was a viable donor for Michael. The transplant was scheduled. Throughout those agonizing days, Charlotte wrestled with conflicting emotions. Pity for an innocent boy's suffering and resentment that the boy's mother had shattered her marriage. Yet she found herself praying for Michael's recovery, determined not to let bitterness consume her. During that time, Gwendolen's investigation uncovered a twist. Sabrina had never named the older man funding her lifestyle, but a source revealed he was none other than Claude Renault, a French businessman involved in questionable enterprises, including alleged blackmail schemes. Sabrina's association with Renault suggested there could be more behind her sudden approach to Rick than pure maternal concern. Armed with this information, Charlotte confronted Sabrina at the hospital. She found her in the hallway outside Michael's room. "We need to talk," Charlotte said, voice trembling. Sabrina looked momentarily flustered. "Charlotte, Michael's about to have surgery." Charlotte's voice softened. "I'm not here to argue about that. I want him to get the best care. But I know about Claude Renault. I know you're not just some mother in desperate need. You have resources." Sabrina's eyes widened. That's not important," Charlotte cut in. "What matters is whether you plan to use Michael to keep Rick under your control, or if you truly want our help. Because if you intend to blackmail my husband, be warned I won't let you." Sabrina's shoulders sagged. She looked tired older. "Renault was just someone I met in Monte Carlo. He offered money for me and Michael when I didn't know how to reach Rick. I didn't realize how deep his criminal ties went. I swear to you that's all in the past. All I want now is for Michael to survive." Charlotte studied her for a moment, searching for sincerity. In Sabrina's haunted eyes, she saw a mother's fear, if nothing else. Reluctantly, she nodded. "Then let's hope you mean it. Because if you hurt Rick again or me, you'll answer to both of us." As they spoke, doctors wheeled Michael into the operating room, with Rick following behind in scrubs. Sabrina and Charlotte stood side by side, anxiety crackling between them like electricity. They watched through the glass pane until the door closed. In that surreal moment, Sabrina turned to Charlotte, tears welling up. "I'm sorry for everything. If I'd found Rick sooner, if I'd told him about Michael years ago, maybe we could have avoided this." Charlotte closed her eyes, tears escaping her lashes. "We can't change the past. All we can do is figure out how to move forward without hurting each other anymore." Hours of anxious waiting followed, culminating in a successful bone marrow procedure. The doctors announced Michael's body was responding positively. Relief flooded Charlotte, and she even allowed herself a small, hopeful smile. In another room, Rick rested pale from the donation, but smiling with deep relief. In the days and weeks that followed, the media circus slowly subsided, with Sabrina no longer fueling speculation and Charlotte publicly standing by Rick. The tabloids moved on to other scandals. Gwendolyn's quiet PR maneuvers helped keep the story from spiraling further. Meanwhile, Rick and Charlotte faced the daunting task of rebuilding their trust. It wasn't easy. There were tears, sleepless nights, and arguments. Yet every time Charlotte felt her resolve weaken, she recalled the image of Rick selflessly helping Michael, determined to save his child's life at any cost. That devotion, she realized, was a sign of the man she'd fallen in love with, the man who, though flawed, would fight tirelessly for what he loved. Ultimately, Charlotte made a choice to forgive, not forget. As for Sabrina, she prepared to return to Europe with Michael, who needed specialized follow-up treatment in Switzerland. Before leaving, she expressed gratitude to both Rick and Charlotte. "You've saved Michael. Whatever happens next, I'm thankful." A hush settled over the Alderman penthouse after her departure, but it was a hush filled with new beginnings rather than shame. And as Charlotte's due date drew near, the couple embraced both the child that might have torn them apart and the one that would bind them even closer. 6 months later, a healthy baby girl was born to Richard and Charlotte Alderman. They named her Amelia Hope Alderman, a reflection of the resilience that had guided them through the storm. Charlotte held Amelia in her arms, gazing at Rick through tear-filled eyes. He gently kissed her forehead, murmuring, "We made it." Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, Michael continued his recovery in a clinic near Lake Geneva. Sabrina sent periodic updates, photos of Michael playing or practicing his reading, small glimpses of a child who grew healthier by the day. Each time Rick's phone chimed with a new message, Charlotte would lean in curious. They'd share a solemn smile, acknowledging a strange reality. Their family extended beyond the city skyline, bridging oceans and scars. Yet the future promised complexity. Michael would eventually know the truth about his father. Amelia would grow up alongside the story of a half-brother in Europe. And while the scandal had subsided, tongues still wagged in certain upper-crust circles. To protect their privacy, Rick and Charlotte chose to limit interviews and social functions, focusing instead on philanthropic projects that supported children with rare illnesses. They set up the Alderman Shaw Fund, ironically named in part for Sabrina, dedicated to researching genetic disorders. Even Gwendolyn pitched in, using her PR expertise to turn a tabloid scandal into a beacon of positive change. And what about Sabrina? True to her word, she stayed away from further controversies. She and Rick communicated infrequently but cordially, ensuring that Michael's well-being remained the priority. The ghost of Claude Renault never materialized again, though rumors suggested Sabrina had severed ties with him for good. One autumn day, a package arrived from Switzerland. Inside was a watercolor painting of a small boy riding a bicycle along a lakeside path. Michael's scrawled handwriting at the bottom read, "Thank you for saving me. Dad." Rick stared at the note, tears forming in the corners of his eyes. Charlotte, cradling Amelia in her arms, gently rested her head on his shoulder. In that single moment, Rick realized how his life had forever changed. He had not one but two children, a daughter in his arms, and a son across the sea, and one devoted wife who had chosen to stand by him even in the face of betrayal. To many, he was Richard Alderman, the real estate mogul with the gilded ring and the messy scandal. To Charlotte and Amelia, he was husband and father. And to Michael, he was a lifeline. No matter how society judged them, the Aldermans had forged a fragile, beautiful unity from shattered trust and lingering doubts. Scandal had been their trial by fire, but out of those flames a new kind of family had emerged, one strong enough to weather any storm, and determined to walk the uncertain path ahead, hand in hand, no matter the odds. In a world where secrets can destroy fortunes and break hearts, the Aldermans stood as a testament to love, forgiveness, and resilience. It wasn't the perfect fairy tale they'd imagined, but it was in many ways something more precious, a real story, forged through pain and perseverance, shining with the quiet truth of family. Just as a single spark can ignite a towering inferno, one secret changed everything for Rick and Charlotte Alderman. Yet through heartbreak, scandal, and betrayal, they discovered a bond that refused to break. By risking their reputations facing the demands of a desperate mistress and embracing an innocent child, they found the true meaning of love and sacrifice. In the end, a new life entered their world. Little Amelia, who symbolizes hope after the storm. Thank you for joining us on this roller coaster ride of passion, deception, and redemption. If you were captivated by this tale, please hit that like button. It tells us you want more stories filled with dramatic twists and emotional depth. Subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications to stay updated when the next scandalous saga unfolds. Share this video to let others experience the gripping world of the Aldermans. Your support makes all the difference. Thank you.